All right, everyone.
Well,
Good Friday night. Welcome to
happy
Doctor of
Friday.
Politics and the Political Architect Show. Good, joined by my co-host tonight here, David Shepard. Dwight is still away on vacation, so I think we get. I guess we get one more show without Dwight. I don't.
Well,
I'm not-
one more day without a mention of Spirity Agnew
that's
or
right. Yeah.
the
So
Royals.
you're holding the torch for Spirity Agnew,
Oh
so that
yeah,
it always gets that mention. Um,
my father, he was interested in politics. Unlike your father, of course, was heavily involved in politics. My father was more passively involved in politics. But my dad did buy a watch that was the Spirity Agnew watch. The Dirty Time Company, they made it, and it was Agnew, and I still have it. And I think it's a collector's item. It's worth something. They came up with later fakes and forgeries, but I think this is the real thing, so it's genuine. So I still have it.
so that
Dad also one other item he bought once was a T-shirt said Kennedy Swim Team.
yeah.
So, and I remember, I don't know if you remember, Eugene Delgadio made a big deal of that. The
Oh
Kennedy
yeah.
Swim
Oh,
Team.
believe me, I know that. So now you're leading me into a.
Uh,
Okay, I'll start there and go back to the watch in a minute. So
uh,
the Ted Kennedy swim team. Okay, yeah, Eugene Delgadio,
yeah,
amazing. I mean, what Eugene did with this. So Eugene contacted me about this, right?
yeah.
And we basically took my interns that were there that one summer. So what would have that have been like? What anniversary we're working on? The
I guess it's of Chappaquiddick.
Yeah, no, but I'm trying to think. So, see, because Chappaquiddick was in
Uh,
July of '69.
69. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think what year was it? July? Was it
It,
'79 or '89 or whatever?
maybe it could have been 89. I
Yeah,
think maybe 89. Maybe.
89 probably.
Yeah.
89 probably sounds bet. That
Yeah.
sounds about right. So
Yeah.
we had the interns. Yeah, '79 doesn't make '79. I still would have been in college. So it would have
Yeah.
been out of college. For the 10th anniversary, I had a whole nother thing I wound up doing with my father and Les Consolving. But the so he crafted this whole thing, and he did a press release. I remember hearing it mentioned on WTOP. And his idea was that they were going to go around and they were going to like swim in one of those little fountains or whatever, and all of this stuff. Now that was against the regulations. That was strictly verboten to do that.
Yeah.
But he rented the whole swim gear, right? And and so here we are in the hot July day, and I think I had one or two, I can't remember exactly how many of these, walking down in this like scuba gear kind of stuff like this through DC, uh, going by, what was it, the La Brassiere, kind of the restaurant that Kennedy liked.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had we had a short walk, but I can only imagine how in that rubber suit how hot some of my
Yeah.
interns were walking around in 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
But the Capitol Hill police allowed them to like dip their toes in it or something like that. That was
Okay.
the extent of it. But yeah, that was the Ted Kennedy swim team, a la Eugene Delgadio.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Eugene for a while, but every time I'd run into him after that, he would always bring up the memories of that, the swim team type of thing like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's still people who were with AIM at that time that are still around DC that were part of that swim team. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was such an unusual and funny thing. David, I think you're like the first person I have heard in decades mention this that was not part of the team.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. And my dad's shirt was unrelated, but he had the T-shirt that said Kennedy Swim Team. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought, yeah, that was one of the funnier things that had gone on there. But
He used to say of the Kennedys, they can't swim, can't fly, can't ski, all these other problems that they seem to
they,
have.
they
But
can't drive.
can't drive. That's right. Yeah. There was a
So yeah,
movie about that, and I thought it was fairly objective. I think the media thought it was too anti-Kennedy, but there was a movie that I saw about Chappaquiddick. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think it was so. so biased towards against Teddy. But after all, I mean, he did leave the woman in the water.
Right.
But so I don't know how you can have a positive version of that. But it was considered. I thought it played it down the middle, based on the records of what.
Well,
What people
we
said.
at AIM, we used in fundraising because we always had a thing like where we'd give away a book with a donation at certain levels, and if you got to I think $100, you get an autographed copy of a book. And so there was a guy who'd written a book on Chappaquiddick, Leo D'Amour, and so we bought and gave away a ton of those books over a period of time. They're very popular, and but in '79, so when I was still in college, and I don't know if you ever knew Les Consolving.
I know the
So
name, but I don't know if I
okay,
remember.
so Les was a Episcopalian minister, but he'd been defrocked. But he was famous or infamous for being at White House press briefings, State Department press briefings, and just haranguing the spokesperson to no
Okay.
end, with
Yeah.
some of the most outlandish questions you could get, and things like that. Uh, and I think Les actually wound up. I think he had a radio show in Baltimore for a number of years as well. But my father and myself, and then Les and his son, we took a trip in July to mark the 10th anniversary of Chappaquiddick, and we had a sign made, like kind of in memoriam, a memorial sign made of this was going to be the spot. And the idea was that we were going to basically erect it at Chappaquiddick at the bridge. Now the bridge had been rebuilt by that
Yeah.
time, and
Right.
everything like that. And we had flyers, and so Consolving Son and myself, we were tasked with the flyers that we were going to have this event, and Consolving, being a minister or former minister, however you want to call it, was going to perform like a little religious ceremony at the bridge, right? And we had a wreath as well, and the people in Martha's Vineyard, they are not happy. They don't like this.
Yeah.
They love the Kennedys, and
Yeah.
the local paper was being run by Scotty Reston, I think it was James Rustin's son, from the New York Times. So this was,
Yeah.
a very liberal enclave. Everything was very liberal, and stuff like that. But being the summer when we showed up for this thing, there was actually a half decent crowd. Probably not necessarily. I think a lot of them were there just because they're there. It's the summertime. And some people are like trying to figure what's going on. But I still remember a lady who was very much in support of that. And so Les did his thing. He threw the wreath over the side of the bridge into the water.
Yeah.
and we put the sign up. The sign lasted less than a day. The
Yeah.
residents there were like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their level of tolerance for anything like that was very low. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
was it was kind of one of those things that you have. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how politics develops over time. But you're mentioning this watch, and the only thing I'm going to say here is that I was actually, as I was kind of tooling around this morning, I caught a bit of a segment on the Smithsonian and political memorabilia.
Yeah.
Right? And I did not know this, but there are a couple of people, at least, who work in, I don't know, I can't remember what the name of the division, but it's basically a division that actually accumulates political memorabilia. And I think their main focus really are the national conventions, though they probably take other stuff along the way. And they
Yeah.
were showing some of the things that they acquired, but they showed them going to both the Republican and Democratic conventions this year, and they look around, they look at all the attendees, they look at the signs. They hoped, a lot of that stuff, a lot of the signs they hold up wind up on the floor, right? They're held up, during a moment, and then hardly anybody really takes them home or does anything with them. So they collect some of that stuff and bring it back to DC. But then they also try to get some of the people, the delegates at these conventions, to give up their hats or things that they adorned, because they think, they say, oh, this is really unique and it kind of fits the flavor. We would love to have this at the Smithsonian. I mean, kind of like, if you're asked to give to the Smithsonian stuff like this, even with the possibility that it may go on display someday. It's like, yeah, well, why not, right? I mean, especially if especially if you're going to do it at the end of the convention, right? You kind of have, maybe you don't necessarily, you can just make a whole new hat the next time or whatever, and stuff like that. So I thought it was interesting that they have this whole, and I guess there's a section in Smithsonian where they have all this stuff on display. They have a lot of it on display, but they can't display everything. Just like a lot of things at Smithsonian, I think they rotate what they put on there.
Probably they have to do that.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see that. So yeah, I mean, that watch you mentioned, who knows? I mean, maybe it's in their collection somewhere, and it comes through rotation. That maybe someday you'd walk through and say, "Oh, I know that watch. I've seen that watch." My dad had that watch. Who knows? And I thought, geez, I wonder if some of this stuff I've accumulated over the years is nothing fancy. I want to say, maybe say, can I send this to you just so I can get out of my house?
Well, I went to one convention, and I have a program from the '92 Republican convention. I bought on Amazon a reprint of the shirt. Maybe I had the same shirt, said 1992 Republican National Convention. So I have that. I bought a reprint of that. But the other thing that I saved is, remember the old tickets that you'd wear around your neck? Mine was a guest pass, so it just says guest and I guess the section. And when I was there, there was a woman, very pretty. She was the Miss Texas or whatever, and she was there signing autographs. So she signed my little badge. I think I still have that. That's the one bit of memorabilia I think I had. And she wrote it in pink. It was pink marker. And I think I still maybe have that. But you mentioned political memorabilia. It reminds me of a show. Remember the old Addams Family? Gomez Addams decided he was going to campaign, get involved in politics. So he goes down to his family room and he has all this political memorabilia. And he says to Morticia, we Adamses have a long history of being involved in campaigns. And the thing is, you look at the wall, and all the pictures up there are the most famous losers. You have William Jennings Bryan, you have Stephen Douglas, you have Henry Clay, and he had all the great losers in history. And he had Stephen Douglas, and then Morticia. He told Morticia's story that his great-great-grandfather was going to go to work for Lincoln, but Lincoln convinced him that he'd probably be happier if he campaigned for Douglas. So he campaigned for Douglas. So anyway, I think of political memorabilia. I think that's great.
All right, now I want you to hold on for a second. I think I might have something that you mentioned right over here, but I'm gonna see if I can go grab it real quick.
All right, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I wish I had a bigger collection than I do. I got a few buttons and stuff, but nothing worth a lot, I don't think. And behind me, you can see my Reagan bust, and I got Washington. So those always prominently displayed. And of course, I've got Richard Nixon's autograph and a Nixon autograph book. I was pictured with George H.W. Bush, so I have that. And I think Don's coming.
Well, I will say this is disappointing because my souvenirs from '92 are not where I thought they were.
Okay.
So now I'm going to be spending the rest of the time thinking like, where did the lanyard go with the little tag on it? I mean, because we were exhibitors in 1992, so we had passes, and I know I had several different ones. I don't even know why. I don't exactly know how that worked out back then. But,
well, AIM was at, you guys were at most of the conventions, weren't you? Didn't you guys?
No, 92 is the only one we went to. Okay. It's only because of Jamie Wheeler. So I don't know if you ever met. Yeah. So yeah. Jamie was a big, he's a big Reaganite. And
yes.
So he had hundreds of T-shirts made up. I don't have the shirt, but
yeah, that's nice. I remember that poster.
Yeah. So this is the poster, but he had a whole bunch of T-shirts with that. So that was on the front of the shirt, and on the back of the shirt it said, it had Reagan True Squad.
Okay.
And so what he did with this this was one of the most brilliant things I can recall seeing, is that Jamie had an amazing knack of recruiting young people, and
Yeah.
so he knew a lot of the young people were going to be there, students, gaffers or whatever, and he recruited them. So he gave every one of those kids a Reagan T-shirt, and
Okay.
with that they had a pre-printed deck of, oh, I don't know, 15 or 20, 25 talking points about Reagan, about the
Okay.
economy. They would have just so if anybody stopped to ask him about it, particularly the media, and they said, "Well, what about his economic record?" They could whip out a card and they say, "Well, this is what the Reagan record was, what the
Yeah.
economy was, whatever the subject." So he had all this stuff. It was amazing, and we got a lot of press for that
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
that. So that as a result of that, and um, we had a bunch of those shirts and whatnot at at the table. So we sold some of those, and we sold some of the posters as well. They were very popular. I mean, I probably sold a poster. It was probably part of the bundle that went to Ted Koppel. When Ted Koppel came by the booth, I
Mm.
tried. He was going to pay, and I said, well, you can just have this for free. It was only like $8 worth of stuff, at the time. And he
Mm.
looked at me and he says, "No, I never want to take anything free from Reed Irvine."
Okay. Yeah.
So it was kind of one of those things. It's like, this is so funny. But yeah, that generated a lot of media attention. But because we had all these shirts so you could go through, I know there was a picture of one of the kids, wearing the shirt, in U.S. News and World Report, and
Yeah.
all over the place. But what really made it take off was that when Reagan gave his speech on the final night or whenever it was, he one of the kids was close enough to the stage that he threw a T-shirt up on the stage.
Okay.
And if you ever go back to, if you can find the footage, you can see the end of that speech, there he and Nancy are kind of doing this, and this T-shirt comes flying up on the stage, and he leans over and he picks it up and he holds it up.
Oh wow. Okay. Oh wow.
You want to talk about earned media or
Oh
something?
yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, Reagan picking it up.
Yeah,
I,
and my compatriot who I was sharing a room with down there was a guy named Charles Moranto, and
oh,
so
I know Charles.
Charles.
Facebook friend. Yeah.
So Charles and I were watching the speech in our room, and we're on our beds and we're watching the speech, and we see this moment. And we look at each other and are like, "What just happened here?"
Yeah. Oh, good.
And so when I check in with the office the next day, our relatively new receptionist
Yeah.
was going bonkers.
Oh wow.
And she's
That's-
like, "What did you guys do? We can't. The phones are ringing off the hook." And there was back then. There's no internet, there's no marketing campaign or anything like this. But somehow people figured out who was behind it, and they started calling our office, and
The
they wanted
shirts.
to buy the shirt and the
Oh man.
poster or whatever. Yeah, it was just nuts.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I think that we left them a lot of money on the table. If there'd only been an internet around, it was like, you know, people could have searched for that T-shirt, and
Yeah.
we would have sold just gobs.
Well, if you have an extra one, I'll buy one off you because I think that'd be a great shirt.
We may
No,
still have
I'm
some.
just being funny.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of stuff still floating
Uh,
around here, but
well, the only
Jamie was amazing, and that's funny
he
that you
was
know Charles too. So
yeah. Well, Jamie what impressed me because when I met him, he had his Reagan jacket on. Ronald Reagan always wore that, and I was helping him on some project. I was a kid, really. I mean, I was in school and I was working at this movie theater. Jamie needed something, and he came all the way down to the theater to get me because I had something to give him. But that just shows the dedication I remember that he had. I mean, he was aggressive in working. That's the thing about him that struck me.
yeah,
Uh,
Jamie's very committed. I
constantly.
mean,
Yeah.
Jamie turned this Reagan poster. He had it remade for Trump.
Okay.
years ago. Yeah. So he's got he's got a Trump version of this Reagan poster,
Oh, good.
basically. The same kind of layout and everything like this, because I remember he used to post pictures of that on Facebook and stuff like that. And I'm thinking like, I know this poster. I know the basic scheme of this whole
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Why
And
reinvent the wheel? You've
yeah,
already got it there.
no, it was it was great. I mean, Reagan, Jamie was probably one of the ultimate Reagan fan. It was amazing.
Yes, he
Yeah, but
was.
yeah, you talk about Reagan jacket. Yeah, he was all Ronald Reagan all the way.
Yeah, he was. Well, that was
And
my first convention at the old Astrodome, and you were there then, and I was with
yeah,
you, but I didn't know you then. But yeah, we stayed at a cheap dive of a hotel, and it wasn't one that they have the ordinary buses go around picking up everyone in the main airports. They hotels. They didn't go to our hotel, but we had to then go to this other hotel, and from there we could pick it up. Um, and I don't think it was the best section of Houston, but I liked it. I mean, I loved Houston. I thought Houston was a great town, and I loved it being there. But
yeah,
I
we
don't know.
were. So I wound up, Jamie booked a bunch of rooms, and for some of the people that he was taking from the office, the younger people or whatever, and did some things. And then for Charles and I booked knowing that we also had Joe Golden coming into town to do something for us. So I booked a bigger room, and it was a Hilton near the medical center area. So it was
Okay.
but we rented a car to get back and forth because we knew we were going to have crazy hours potentially, because the exhibit hall was in the Astro Arena, which is next door to the Astrodome, right?
Okay. All right.
So
That's right.
there was two portions of that. There was the Astrodome, and then there was the Astro Arena, which is connected to it. And the Astro Arena is also where the media was. They had a section in there, and so it also is probably why we had a lot of media traffic, because when there's downtime and stuff like that, and they're in this big area, in part of this hall, why not walk through this huge exhibit hall and see
Yeah.
what you can find?
Yeah.
Because it's right there. You don't have to go through any rigmarole to get into into the Astrodome at that point, and things like that. But
Mhm.
the yeah, it's just kind of amazing to see that. But I remember, because we were there for several days, during that, basically during the main part of the convention. um, we had sent a lot of stuff down there. We'd sold a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
For us, that was one of our first forays into like selling any kind of merchandise and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were overwhelmed by how much people, were buying. And I think
Yeah.
Charles, as we were doing like daily tallies of the money, you know, he said it felt like Goodfellas or something
Okay.
like that.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, we were getting, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars back then. And
Yeah.
and making me nervous, because it's like, how am I going to take back to DC, like 10, 12, $15,000 or whatever the amount was.
Yeah. It's not like you had Venmo or a credit card machine. I guess you weren't swiping
it
credit
was
cards.
it was absolutely nuts. And yeah,
How would you handle all that cash? That's what I would think would be an issue, unless you
yeah,
could get it to a
it just makes
bank.
you nervous. You put it in your carry-on luggage, and you just
Oh, man.
you just don't, you try to act normal.
Yeah,
But you're
that's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just like, you do feel like you're some kind of money launderer or something
Yeah.
when you're carrying all this cash.
Was it worth it?
And
Did you find?
it was like you said, not only Venmo is, I mean, today you have Square, and it's other things where you can go ahead and take a credit card easily, pay a
Yeah.
small fee. Those
Yeah.
things weren't available really back then. It was very
That's
expensive
right.
to do anything like that on a short-term basis. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a heck of an operation back then. The main reason we never went back to other ones is, I mean, we looked into that, is that it got substantially more expensive to get a booth.
Oh, right. Okay.
In 1992, it was $1,500 per 10 by 10 space. So we bought two spaces. But by
Yeah.
1996, they had jacked up the price, because it's not the RNC that controls that per se. They basically issue a contract to a vendor, who basically guarantees them X amount of dollars or whatever, and things like that. And so that's the master vendor. And then that person then goes and figures out how much they need to charge to make their own profit, and then give the RNC a cut of the funds and everything like that. And then they were, I think, in San Diego for '96. They were telling the vendors you had to be there like a week early. It's like, this makes no sense. It's like there's hardly anybody there a week early. There's a handful of people coming into town for some platform stuff and some other meetings, but the bulk of the people are coming in like a day before, and they'll leave the day after. It's basically a 4-day event. They're asking people to be there for like 10 days or something like that. It's like, this makes no economic sense. So we never went back there. And the other vendors for like Philadelphia and other ones, we kind of poked at it a little bit. We said it doesn't make sense. Sometimes I think in like Philly, it wasn't even in quite the same area. They had set up a completely separate area in Philly from where the convention center was. So these were vendors are here and convention centers here or whatever. And I'm thinking logistically, it's like, so what drives people over to the vendor area, when then they have to go blocks and blocks to go to the convention itself. If you're right next door and everything's in relatively close proximity, you're probably fine. And I guess the vendors probably did fine, whether or not it was San Diego or Philadelphia and all the other places. But to me, logistically, I thought it just sounded like a higher risk proposition for something that they were starting to charge. I think the fees had more than doubled. And I'm like, it's like, we can't, we're not going to make any money off of this thing anyway. This was always going to, with all the overhead, you're going to lose money, a little bit of money, but it was try to get to know people and get them to know you and things like this. But there's kind of a limit as to how much money I was willing to lose at those events.
It's the same. It's sort of what I go through with the book is buying tables. And the thing about buying tables is sometimes it works, but a lot of times it doesn't. And I have to sell so many books to justify the cost. And I have been told that CPAC's very expensive. And an author told me he lost a good bit of money doing that. And there are other events that are very pricey. So I think for booksellers, I don't know if it's the best bet. You guys at least could be there to promote AIM.
Right.
And there's some other benefit to that. But if you're just selling merchandise, it's probably pretty tough to make your money back.
Yeah. And I know some of these people who probably have done pretty well because, they buy a lot of stuff. They source their goods very cheaply, et cetera, et cetera. They've got all kinds of ancillary ways of selling the merchandise, beyond the convention and whatnot. So they probably do okay with that. Yeah. I mean, CPAC, we loved CPAC for the longest period of time, but, once they started, jacking the price up, I just couldn't see any justification of having a booth there anymore. It made no sense. Even if part of it was to promote AIM, it was just so expensive. And I know a lot of people think, oh yeah, CPAC, at least before they started doing the CPACs around the country, when it was just at in DC area, right, just the one every year, was that there was always going to be people who were there thinking they could sell something, whether or not it's a book, a game. I've seen law firms, all kinds of different organizations and things like that, and a lot of them wind up being one-off because they either didn't get the traffic, the foot traffic to promote their organization, or they didn't get they couldn't make enough sales to justify that. They lost most of what they lost a good bit of there. And if you're a small business person, you can't take that very much. You can only deal with
especially if you have to get a hotel room or your expenses just be there for a bit. It just
So it's been years since I've been at a CPAC, and now at my age, I really don't look back about that stuff. It's part of a history that I enjoyed, but the world has changed, right? I mean, things have just changed dramatically in how we do things.
And business, like I said, nobody has cash, so you're into Venmo, you're into Zelle.
Yeah.
You have the credit card machine you mentioned. It's just very different. And when I was going anywhere, I'd have lots of cash with me, and everything was paid by cash. But now we're moving to a cashless society. I've often said, tongue in cheek, but with some seriousness, if you're a panhandler, you're asking for money. I mean, a lot of people don't have cash on them. And it's like
Yeah.
I used to give the excuse to someone, no, I don't have any money on me. But it's sort of true. I don't have any cash on me.
I carry very
Yeah,
little cash. I mean,
yeah,
most of my transactions are credit card because I'm trying to get my 2% cash back or whatever it is,
yeah,
on my credit card or
yeah,
and there's so many rewards cards out there that people are looking to juice
yeah,
their rewards and things like that. There's a whole nother thing behind that too, though, right? It's like carrying those cards costs uh, the merchant that is receiving variable rates. So,
yeah.
yeah, we may think most people think that, oh, I'm getting 2% back on this card, or I'm getting 2 miles per dollar charged on this. But in reality, while they're getting that out for them,
Mhm.
the merchant itself may not be, every transaction may have a different fee structure attached to it. So, American Express cards are always more expensive to take than the Visa MasterCard. But
Yeah,
within Visa MasterCard, there's variations on the rewards programs that at certain levels, because I remember when we took cards, and I remember I could look at a statement once it started becoming popular, and you could see when they would send statements, you could see the transactions would be listed by fee type, and there was different, depending upon whatever that card was that we took, and we didn't really pay attention at the time. It might be 2.68% on one, it might be
mm,
3.25% on another one.
mm,
We didn't really know when we took the card. We only found out later after the fact when the credit card company said, here's your reconciliation of what the fees are that you're getting charged, for
mm.
all of that. So, I mean, it's a cost of doing business, so you do it, but it does eat into the bottom line one way or the other. And, for a while you have to worry about fraud issues. And I think some of those things are much better than they used to be and whatnot. All right. So a lot of other sideline stuff that we've done
Oh,
here in the first 32 minutes or so.
sorry.
Um, let's talk about some other news. So the Democratic National Convention is done. We are now going to be in the heart of the race. I think you mentioned last week, though. I mean, we're at 73 days, but we're not really at 73 days because
Yeah,
early voting, that's going to start in early September around the
yeah,
country in various states. So in some places, it's far less than that. It can be 25 days or 20 days before some of the voters can actually are eligible to cast their votes.
yeah.
So
Virginia goes out early too. Not to interrupt you, but they send out. Well, I thought about it, they send out ballots pretty darn early. Some other states are the same way. Some don't, but you're looking at in a couple weeks. Probably having a few states sending out ballots.
yeah,
And it could be that Kamala doesn't do a interview or take any questions until the ballots in many states already have gone out.
yeah. Well, I mean, even the debate, if they actually pull that off,
Yeah,
September 10th. I mean, I think North Carolina is going to mail out their ballots on September 6th. I mean,
yeah,
it's theoretically possible that they mail it out on the 6th, people get them on the 7th or the 8th, and they return them. And if this debate goes off, votes have already been cast before
yeah,
that debate even takes place.
yeah,
So, it's a very, very different kind of scenario that we have. But that convention, I don't know, what we were looking at beforehand. I mean, we knew that Biden was going to speak. I think we kind of knew Clintons were going to speak, Obama's were going to be there, and things
yeah,
like that. And there was a whole bunch of other things that were thrown in between because conventions are chock full of speakers and things like that. But Joe Biden, has the opening night speech in essence,
mm,
and it was a very bitter speech, right? I mean, it was he looked like an angry old man,
yeah,
uh, and on top of that, because of this ineptness, or maybe it was planned, by by those people, by the DNC. But that speech didn't. That speech was delayed for more than an hour because of how far behind they ran. So Joe didn't finish till what, after midnight.
Yeah, it must have been rough. Yeah.
The most rough for him. Got to be rough
Yeah.
for the delegates that decide to hang around.
Yeah.
But if you're Joe Biden, I mean, you're exiting the stage in essence. This is kind of your last big political speech, probably like this. Now you're turning over the party nomination to your vice president, and your time speaking slot gets waylaid to a big extent, and then you give this speech, which he tries to defend some of the things that they've done, in the administration, which are not things that I would say are worthwhile, points to talk about in terms. It's probably fine red meat for the Democrats, but for if you're trying to convince the general public as to why to vote for Harris, and then you listen to what Biden, and he tied himself to Harris, right? Did he not? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Harris is trying to get away from him to a certain extent. She's trying to pick and choose how much she wants to stay aligned with Biden-Harris administration, to how much she wants to say this is what the Harris administration would do. And so, when you listen to it, you're like, I don't want this kind of stuff going forward. We can see that this is going to be, Harris-Walz will be a very far left administration. That's not what America wants and needs. But I do get a little bit worried that could still become a possibility, right? I'm like, the polls had swung her way. She was in this honeymoon period. I don't know how accurate poly market is, that betting market, but before Harris came in, before Biden dropped out, Trump was with poly market. He's like cruising. He's got like 60%.
Yeah.
Right? After Harris gets in, I was checking it. I think Harris had hit a high of 54%.
Yeah.
But maybe the honeymoon is beginning. Some of that shine is beginning to wear off. She's not quite the bright, shiny new object anymore. Now it's like 50. I think it's 51-48 as of a couple hours ago for Trump. So it flipped back. Not as big as under Biden, but it's kind of I'm looking at it thinking like it's kind of an interesting thing, that's going on there. And
well, I think it'll come down after. I think this is sort of the peak. I don't know what type of bounce she gets out of the convention, but I think she's probably received most of her bounce now. And if she adopts the basement strategy, which I think is what she'll try to do, I think she's going to try to hang on that way. But if she has to start answering some questions, and the more questions she has to answer, I think it'll start coming down, 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 down. And then, of course, Bobby Kennedy now endorsing Trump. That's really extraordinary that you'd have a Kennedy backing a Republican. I don't ever recall that, but I think the media will try to downplay that, but I don't know if they can. I think that's pretty extraordinary, him doing that. But then I'm hearing conflicting stories that if he stayed in, it would hurt Harris more than Trump. I don't know. Bobby Kennedy thinks him staying in hurts Trump more, and he doesn't want to help Harris. So I don't know how that would play out. But the fact that he's endorsing Trump is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's a
that's
big effing deal.
It's been very unclear as to exactly who Kennedy was taking the votes away from. Where was that base of support coming from? It was never, the polls would, if you look at the polls, I think more polls would say it was probably hurting Trump a little bit more than Harris, but I think overall it's pretty inconclusive. It's not a guarantee. Kennedy endorsing Trump, I think you take it because it's remarkable on the face of it, like you said too, and if there are some people that will swing Trump way, that we're going to vote for Kennedy, then that's good. I'm fine with that. But I mean, it also may mean that people will feel like they've been left without a candidate. Maybe they'll go with Cornel West or something like that.
Maybe.
Which would go even further left. Right?
Yeah.
Cornel West, at least, I mean, I guess if you're Harris, you can say, I'm not going to be as far as Cornel West is. Okay.
Yeah. Walls, maybe. But I think it comes back down to earth, though. So I don't know how long it'll take for her to start coming back down to earth, but I think that'll happen. And at some point, hopefully, I think Trump will end up taking the lead again. But for now, Harris looks like she's doing very well. But again, I don't know if it's, as they say, a sugar high, or she's just the latest craving, the newest thing. And let's face it, it's been totally uncritical. There hasn't really been any spotlight on her record. But Trump did have a good ad. I heard it just took it's very brief, but it took a quote from Harris about inflation, and then it's, I'm Donald Trump and I approve of this
I
message.
saw that. I said, I
Okay.
thought, is that a commercial or is that a meme?
Yeah. Well, what did you
But
think of it? I only heard it. I didn't see it.
I saw it. Yeah. No, she's just it's part of that stiction to talk it. Where it's part of it. It's just clipped from. I think it's clipped from where she's trying to talk about how they're going to put the price controls in and fight those greedy corporation type of things like this. And
Yeah.
so they just it's very short. And she talked about the high food prices, and then there's that Trump line, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect, because that's actually the real truth. It's not
Yeah.
these corporations, because we talked about this last week, right? And we talked
Yeah.
about some price controls and shrinkflation and all these kind of all this other nonsense.
Yeah.
And you know, Harris is so uneducated on this whole situation. But you're right in terms of no one's really called Harris out uh, fully for her what they're doing. I mean, both sides have been issuing some policies. Neither side, I think, has issued much in the way of in-depth policies. But if you're Harris and you're part of the incumbent administration, you'd kind of think that you'd have your policies more formulated right out of the gate, so that
Yeah.
people could look and say, "This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going." And a lot of it is very vague stuff, if not outright just communist stuff, right? So
Yeah.
socialism and communism. Um, and Harris, yeah, can she really speak on her own off the teleprompter without going into a word salad? We don't know. She won't face the press on this kind of a thing at all. So there's a lot to be said about that. Um, but she's, like I said, she's kind of been the bright shiny new object. I do agree with you. I can't believe that she'll really get a convention bounce, because I think it's already been built into the cake, right? It's already
Yeah.
been baked into the cake at this point. Is that all this stuff leading up to the convention, because of this enthusiasm swell and the sigh of relief that the Democrats have had, because it's not going to be Biden, and we now have a shot where we're definitely going to lose under Biden. Uh, you know, there's just been this rush of energy and enthusiasm. The question will be is that if you tried to look at whatever record that she's going to be running on and whatever her platform is going to be, that will start to separate them. And this convention, one of the things is that whether or not it's Joe Biden, you know, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Tim Wilson, and Harris herself. What has been one of the main focuses? Donald Trump. There has,
Yeah.
and as a friend of mine said, Donald Trump, you know, is lives rent free in the Democrats' heads, right? And he
Yeah.
really does. This is still a continuation of what we've been seeing for years, which is this Trump derangement syndrome, is that they can't help but criticize Donald Trump. It's easier to criticize Donald Trump and make fun of him than it is to actually talk about real policy. And that's what
Yeah.
they've been doing, is that they criticize Donald Trump, but they really don't talk about policy. So this is what kind of seems like a repeat of what we've seen before. Hopefully some of the people can catch on and say, but where's the beef? Where's the meat of this thing? What are you going to do for me? A lot of people have suffered a lot with inflation, and the Harris does not have a good answer for this.
Well, I mean, she was part of the administration, so I don't know how she can distance herself. And she said Bidenomics is working. They have her on tape saying Bidenomics is working. So, okay, then how are you running against him? I mean, she's going to try to run against him to the extent that she can, but she's part of the administration. Obviously, she'd meet with him once a week. If she had the answer to inflation, why didn't she just do something about it over the last 4 years? Also, she's in charge of the border, which is her one job they gave her, and she did nothing. It looks like did nothing. Looks like did
Right.
absolutely nothing. So
Right. Yeah, and they still really haven't defended very well why she, how she flip-flops on fracking and things like this.
yeah,
Yeah, some of these other issues. So, she's vulnerable to attack. I mean, I do think that to a certain extent that the Democrats, by criticizing Trump at the convention, they did get a lot of response that they were looking for, because Trump always seems to have a very thin skin when it comes to criticism. And
yeah,
so he immediately fires back on True Social or some medium, and then, with some whatever comment he has. I keep, for me, I personally wish that he would just go ahead and let them criticize him. Let them
yeah,
yell and scream and have their temper tantrum, and you take the higher ground. Look, a couple of things that, as leading up to Obama's, the Obama speaking there, as I was watching some of the news, was, you know speeches given by Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. So Barack Obama's 2004 speech, talking about there's no red America, there's no blue America, there's only United States of America, there's no conservative America, there's no liberal America, there's only United States of America. Well, so you run that and you say, okay, so Barack Obama, exactly what did you do? What happened when you left office? There was a greater divide in this country than there ever had been, even though you supposedly said that you were going to unite everybody and there was only one America. And we know the United States of America, but he wound up dividing America even more so than it had been to that time, and probably opened the door eventually to a Donald Trump running for office, and to
yeah,
try, and doing that. And then Michelle Obama, what was it, 2016? When they go low, we go high, right?
yeah.
Where were they going high during this convention, right? They seem to
Well,
have already forgotten that, because the number of attacks they went at Donald Trump, and a lot of, some of the things that they were saying, that's not going high. They were going low. So they've already abandoned that, type of a thing like that. So they're continuing to divide America more so, than unite America. So anything that they say that they're going to bring America together again, that's just a bunch of malarkey, as Joe Biden
as,
would say.
as Joe would say, yeah. Well, this will be his last convention, so I think so.
Yeah.
He's done, but and Clinton apparently went over his time. I heard Clinton always does that.
Apparently, yeah, he went off the teleprompter. Probably didn't make them happy, but that
Yeah, and
apparently
my
that
my
he does that.
the other understanding that I have that they had Biden go late is they were concerned that he might have a gaffe and they wanted him to go past prime time, kind of, or stretch it because or if he went old man crazy on them, and started saying, "F you people," and I should still be the nominee. So maybe that's why they had him go so late.
Yeah,
So,
I will take this position on Biden to this extent. It's like, this is the president of the United States, and even though he's leaving the stage as such, he's not going to be the president of the United States come, in January of 2025, right? Uh,
uh,
that Where is the respect for Joe Biden, the president of the United States, to then basically push his time off, so that, even if they wanted to kind of push him a little bit more out of the prime time slot, Democrats they were totally disrespecting him. They didn't stay on schedule. Maybe they were, they had engineered this whole thing to go later and whatnot. But
yeah,
I think, even though I don't agree with Joe Biden, I think that Joe Biden deserved an opportunity to say goodbye in his own words. Even if it was this bitter, angry kind of guy, he deserved that as the president of the United States. Go ahead and let him have his say. And then,
yeah,
this is the end of his 52-year or whatever political career, in essence. I'm sure, he's stewing about that. I'm sure Jill Biden is stewing about this, in terms of how he was treated, and, and I can only imagine the schism between Biden and Pelosi and the Obamas and people who helped engineer Chuck Schumer, who helped engineer his exit. In essence,
Yeah.
though, and then and Biden's line in there about stepping aside because he loved this country more than anything else, kind of thing like that. It's like, no, it's like you wanted to stay,
Yeah,
but people close to you said, "Get out."
yeah.
Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and the power brokers were saying, "Out. You have to get
Yes.
out for the better part of the party. You've got to save the rest. You got to save our candidates, and the only way of doing that is to leave."
Yeah, I agree.
So
Yeah, and he gets away with those types of lies. That's what
right,
gets me.
and in time, I mean, history will. He'll be remembered. I mean, he goes down as a one-term president and someone who late in the game, backed out of running for a second term. But like everything else with a lot of former presidents, it'll his history down the line will probably wind up being a lot softer and a lot kinder to him
No,
in the long run. That
they're
you know,
already talking about putting him on Mount Rushmore.
yeah, I know. As Nancy Pelosi said, you don't have to take Teddy Roosevelt down. You can just put Joe up, right?
Yeah. So it's so absurd, but that's what they'll do. And because there was no reelection, because he would have gotten destroyed in a reelection. And I made this point ad nauseum, but because he decided not to run, that can sort of protect historians in the future to advance the nonsense that he was a good president. And I think that they will try to push that fake narrative. But
Yeah. So I didn't look at this, and maybe you know this better than I do in terms of have we had anywhere in our history or recent history where you have a nominee like this where they didn't go through a primary at all.
mm,
So there were no actual votes cast for the presidential nominee at all, right? I mean,
yeah,
it.
I don't
I
recall that in my lifetime.
Yeah, I don't recall it at all of this ever happening. And there's maybe someone who's got has better history knowledge of presidential races, but this seems to be unprecedented in that sense
Yeah,
that to have a nominee that no one voted for,
yeah,
uh,
that's right.
and to put
And
her up.
Biden's line about passing the torch off to another generation, of course, that's not true for the reason you said. He wanted to run. He wasn't going to get out. He was forced out. And there's no primaries, so he didn't really pass it on to another generation. He just passed it on reluctantly against his will to Kamala Harris, who happens to be from a different generation. But it's just a big stretch to spin it that way. I want to pass it on to a new generation. That
Yeah,
really isn't true.
yeah.
So
There's they talk about any lies or falsehoods that were said at the Republican National Convention or anything that Trump says, but there are plenty of inaccuracies at the
oh,
DNC convention as well,
yeah,
going through all of that. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, you want a new generation, and yet you still have the old guard there with Clinton and Obama and these people there. Um,
yeah, and
but
they'll still
I
and
don't
they'll
I don't
still
know. Did we really see any stars of the future? I guess Hakeem Jeffries or whatever, but I don't know that anybody. I don't know
well,
anybody hit a home run. In terms of being the future leader that they're looking for.
no, but they're pushing your governor Wes Moore
They are. They are. They are. Yeah. It
as the
helps to
next
be.
Barack Obama.
It helps to be young and black,
Yeah,
and everything.
and I don't really see why that's I mean, it is among Democrats as a compliment to say you're the next Barack Obama. You're the next Jimmy Carter. You're the next Joe Biden. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, please look at the record. I'm not sure you want that record.
no, I don't think so. But I mean, people are just sort of I don't want to say stupid, but I don't think they follow it. I think it's so much of it is identity politics, and so much of it is just the assumption that someone's new or different because they're, say a non-white male, but it's still the same policies. It's still she's part of the same administration. There's
Yeah,
no real change just because you say, well, her gender's different or her race is different. Well, that may be true, but in terms of substance, there's no difference.
yeah, that's very true. I don't know. We live in a very interesting world, in terms
Yeah.
of we're seeing things that I could never have imagined, and it you can read and listen to a lot of different things and get lots of different opinions about this, and
Yeah.
no one really knows which way this is going. I think the polls that show that momentum has swung to Harris will start to show that they'll start to swing back to Trump.
Yeah.
I think either way, the numbers are probably going to stay within the margin of error on at least the popular vote, so
Yeah.
that part is going to be very tight. Um, I still think that Harris probably has a tougher road to win enough electoral votes to get this, but
Yeah.
you just never know what someone will pull something out of their bag of tricks and just kind of take that away. I don't think that Trump still griping about the 2020 election and being stolen. I don't think that helps anything at all. I think you have to. We're at 2024. You got to move on, focus on this, and say also, please say you'll accept the results. I'm tired. I'm tired of all of this stuff that where they hem and they haw and they politicians. And I'm not talking just about Donald Trump. Talking about other politicians. Say in general, if would you accept the results of the 2024 election? Where even some other Republicans would, still won't commit to that. And I'm like, come on, this is the voting system we have. We know it's not perfect, but you can't just go ahead and accuse everybody of voter fraud and then gum up the works and then not really have any proof, beyond a shadow of a doubt to prove that and everything like that. So can we please move on? Is the way I would prefer it. All right. We've reached the end of the show. Final thoughts, David.
One final thought. Still pushing my book. I'm in Reston on Sunday. So that's going well, and I'm happy the DNC convention's over, and now I can stop watching regular TV again, and hopefully Trump will start stepping it up. I must say though, when I go on YouTube, I see so many of the Kamala Harris ads. I see very little Trump ads. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if that means they just think I'm a liberal on YouTube or because of what I'm checking. But it seems to me that we're not doing near as well, at least with YouTube ads. But I don't know. Maybe some other areas Trump's focusing on is advertising. But I think the key is with Kamala, you got enough of what she really said and just use that. I think that's enough to win it. I don't know if they'll break out her Ukraine-Russia war recitation where she said, "So Ukraine is a country in Russia, is a country in Europe. Russia is a country." And I don't know if they'll break that one out, but I think use her own words against her is what I would say. And that's it. Everything else is well here in Fairfax.
Yeah, so that does bring up an interesting question about how does YouTube serve up their ads? So is that are you if you're checking on some of the liberal things to see what they're saying, is it think that that's what you want? So it serves up the Harris ads versus the Trump ads. I don't know. I'll have to ask my wife. She watches a fair amount of YouTube. Well, she watches a lot of different things. So I'm not sure you can pinpoint her down as always Trump stuff. I mean, because she watches some international stuff that I don't even know why the heck she watches it, but she finds it interesting and so whatever. And she sprinkles in other things in between there. They should be serving me Trump ads. I'll have to see because I'll watch Megyn Kelly and a bunch of others, on YouTube and things like that. So I would think that I would be prime target for getting a bunch of Trump ads. So anyway, just finally speaking here and just wrapping it up. So the Supreme Court has blocked Biden's Title IX transgender edict for now. We'll see how that plays out in the end. But that's a victory for conservatives right now. This whole transgender thing has gotten way out of hand, and I'm glad the Supreme Court is trying to push back on this. But these are still things about, if Harris wins the presidency, she'll push this even further. They'll continue to, it's not just the economic policy, it'll be this cultural issues as well, the environmental, the climate change, and all these kinds of things. These will continue to go through, and I think in the last 3.5+ years, I think we've suffered enough from these policies that We need to, even though we know Trump and he wasn't completely successful in everything, we know that that was better than what we've been getting for the last 3.5 years. I thought it was interesting that Tulsi Gabbard was supposedly drafted to help prepare Trump. Hopefully, she can help Trump stay on message. As you say, if you use Harris's words against her, if Trump can be restrained enough, just listen to whatever Harris says. Throw it right back at her. Stay away from personal attacks on Harris. He wins the day. He may pick up a few extra votes. He wins the election. I think it's perfectly. If the Democrats want to attack Trump, fine. Trump's personal attacks on Harris, if he's the media is too much in the Harris camp that they portray Trump as this racist and bigoted person, et cetera, et cetera. So stay away from that. And then Ford just become the latest. Ford's canceling their third row electric EV, so they're bigger, and they're going to go to hybrid models. I think they're taking a write down of about $1.7 billion. We have seen, I don't know how many of these we've seen where all these auto companies that rushed to the EV revolution have started to pull back. Ford was losing like $44,000 on every vehicle they were selling in the EV range.
Wow.
And so this was absolutely nuts. But they thought that make part of this. If Trump wins, then I think these guys breathe a sigh of relief, because Biden's rules about we want to be more go more green. California's rules he can't do much about, except maybe somewhere along the line California will wake up and say, we can't have these 2035 mandates or whatever they are. It doesn't make any sense to be mostly EV, at that point in time. Especially if these guys stop making the EV cars, who are they going to go to be buying them? What these guys are doing is that this auto manufacturers are is that they're switching to hybrids. So, that takes away a lot of the range anxiety, a slightly more affordable car. But new cars are expensive, which is another big problem for people as inflation has reared its ugly head, supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of issues there, but the EV revolution is struggling a little bit. And, Democrats who have pushed this are kind of, it's hard for me to imagine. I don't know what they're planning on doing as we get closer and closer to, every year to when they want to say, we've got to, we don't want to be selling, gas powered cars. But this may have that policy is going to have to change, because people still aren't ready. They're not ready to buy in to all EVs yet. So, though my wife doesn't want to, after watching Tucker Carlson and his funny review of the Cybertruck, it's like, if I had $100,000 to waste, I'd buy that truck. So that'd be a lot of fun. But and other than that, all right. Well, thanks for joining me tonight, David. Thanks for those who've been watching and will watch this program on a rebroadcast down the line, on replay on YouTube and whatever. We're glad that you could join us tonight. We know that you missed Dwight. I think we get Dwight back in about 2 weeks. So with that, we'll sign off and say we'll see you again next Friday. And please stay safe and stay well, and just God bless America, I guess, right?
All right.
We'll see you again.
God save the Queen, as Joe Biden would say.
God save the